programs in medical education at Washington University began in 1891 with the acquisition of the St. Louis College of Medicine by Washington University. And then a few years later, the Missouri College of Medicine joined to become the medical department at Washington University. And so the Carnegie Institution commissioned a study which was carried out by Abraham Flexner and issued a report writing and calling it little better than the worst he had seen and wholly inadequate in every way. That didn't sit well with Robert Brookings, who had been the chairman of the Board of Trustees of Washington University, and when convinced, as he quickly was, that there were serious issues, set about to completely reorganize and reform the School of Medicine. Brookings decided to move the school from its downtown location to its current position on Kings Highway, and then Brookings set about to recruit an outstanding faculty. And among the outstanding scholars that Brookings recruited included George Dock, who became the first dean and the first chairman of the Department of Medicine.
Dr. George Dock was the man of the time for us. His job was to organize this department, to organize the teaching, to organize a faculty. He had 3 professorships. So he was very well trained. Osler said of him that he was the person who was best trained in clinical medicine and diagnosis of anyone in the United States. Dr. Dock is said to have been the person who abolished the Prince Albert coat and striped trousers. He is the first person on record to have worn a white coat.
Well, Dr. Dock left after his monumental task of organizing and designing the new hospital and the new Department of Medicine. It was important that they continue the tradition of teaching and research. And it took them several years to find a likely candidate, and they started a theme that was consistent throughout the history of the department, and that is giving a great deal of responsibility in recruiting a promising young person. And that person was David Barr.
The department chair when I was a freshman was Dr. David Barr. Barr's rounds were the professorial rounds. When the professor made rounds, next to him would be some of the attending staff, and then would come the chief resident in medicine, then the assistant residents in medicine in the pecking order, from the senior assistant down to the junior assistant, then the intern, then the senior medical student, and at the end of the line was the junior medical student, who was at least 20 yards away from the professor.
Dr. Barr left and went back to New York. The question was Washington University going to continue to increase its reputation and its contributions to medical education? And they looked hard and long for the appropriate person, and somehow they decided on a 32-year-old physician who was 2 years out of his training, and who had less than 10 publications on his CV. And I think what decided them was the fact that Dr. Barry Wood had been a tremendous success in every endeavor he ever tried.
When I came, Barry Wood was the chairman, a very exciting person, absolutely wonderful teacher and role model who excited all of us young people right from the start and made us want to do great things.
Well, I received a telephone call, Bob, when I was down there from the dean of Washington University, Philip Schaefer. And he came right to the point over the phone and said that the faculty had decided to invite me to come there as the professor of medicine. Well, I was just flabbergasted. I had just finished my house officer training. I'd been out only 2 years from my assistant residency. But I did know that medical school was famous for taking young people. And it was a great privilege to be trying to run and build a department at that age when you're fairly vigorous and you're not bound down with lots of tradition. And of course, it was tremendously exciting.
His tenure as professor of medicine really put Washington University into the super elite class. And that was continued, of course, with his good friend and colleague, Carl Moore.
Carl Moore, who is now the head of the department at Washington University, and we worked out an arrangement where we shared the chairmanship. He was co-chairman, and he took the service half the year, and I took it half the year.
Carl was steady. He pointed always to excellence as he conceived it to be, and he very much appreciated and revered the people in the preclinical departments. He encouraged many of us to go to the preclinical departments for some of our training so we'd be better adapted to science.
Well, Carl Moore was perhaps the most extraordinary person I've ever met. He was recruited here in 1938 to start a division of hematology, and he was extraordinarily successful in doing that. He would never ask somebody to do any task that he wasn't willing to do himself. He treated everybody well. He was a great bedside teacher. And on top of that, he had these remarkable personal characteristics, obvious leadership abilities. When he walked into a room, it was clear that he would be the dominant person. And one other thing he was very good at was recognizing talent in young people and getting the best and the brightest to come to the Department of Medicine to work.
In the Department of Medicine alone, there were only 65 faculty members at the time that Dr. Moore retired in 1972, and at the time that Dr. Kipnis became chairman of the department.
Then Dave Kipnis came along, and Dave changed everything. He pursued excellence just as did Carl and Barry, but he built the department into a much larger organization.
Dave Kipnis's philosophy, if you will, in terms of academic development, is to identify and recruit and retain the best possible people.
So it's this idea of getting young people with tremendous potential and then providing them with every kind of resource to succeed.
The essence of it was that he did not want our resources to be rate limiting as these people pursued their dreams here.
Well, I think that he is the quintessential, what we used to call, or what we still call, the triple threat. And the triple threat is somebody who's an outstanding researcher, an outstanding clinician, and an outstanding teacher. And he is able to do all three of those extraordinarily well. He recruited some very outstanding people who are still, extraordinarily important in the medical school. Wayne Yokoyama is one person, John DiPerzio is another. So he certainly has left a legacy in that regard.
The first step was getting those two hospitals together. Wasn't easy. Every hospital has its own culture. So when you start merging cultures, you have to overcome a number of barriers. It has to be done very carefully. The answer is really board leadership. The boards of these hospitals have to agree that this is the right thing to do before it can even be discussed. And it was the coming together of the board under the leadership of a lot of great people, Bill Danforth, Lee Liberman, Chuck Knight, and so forth, others.